My name is Pam Kleinpeter. I'm the library director, and today I'm going to talk to you about some tips and strategies that you can use to evaluate information. In particular, the information that you find when you're searching for things online. First off, I hope this isn't a shock to anyone, but the internet is full of lies. It's not all lies. There's a lot of good stuff on the internet. There's a lot of bad stuff on the internet. And it's becoming increasingly difficult to be able to tell the difference. So it is up to you to evaluate the information that you find when you're on the internet and decide if it is trustworthy or not. And this can be information that you're looking for research, for your classes, or it could just be information that you could use in your everyday life. We use information all day long to make big decisions and small decisions. So information is a driving force in your life, whether you realize it or not. And being able to evaluate the information that you find helps you to make better decisions. So the first thing we're going to look at is this commercial. And hopefully it shows up in this recording. If not, there's a link to it. But it's a commercial from State Farm. And it's not going to show up in the recording. But if you do use the link in the presentation, which I'm going to make sure that's in the description below, it is the rather infamous State Farm French model commercial. And the whole point is just because you read it on the internet, it doesn't make it true. So what we're going to talk about is how you make those determinations. What kinds of questions do you ask yourself? What types of questions do you need to ask? And so that's where the CRAAP test comes in. And it is an acronym. It is CRAAP. And each letter stands for a category of question that you can ask yourself, different aspects of information that you need to be able to answer in order to make a determination about whether or not it is trustworthy. So the C stands for currency, the R stands for relevance, the A stands for authority, the second A stands for accuracy, and then the P stands for purpose. So this is a modified version. It was created by Sarah Blakesley at Merriam Library at CSU Chico. Like I said, each letter in the acronym stands for a category of question that you should ask yourself. So it's kind of like a checklist. So when we talk about currency, we're talking about the age of the information. How old is the information? When was it posted? When was it published? Has it been updated or revised since it was published? Is it current or out of date for your topic? And that will vary by topic. If you are researching something historic, something like the Civil War, something like a historical person, then the age of your information isn't going to be as important of a factor. Things that were written about the Civil War 20, 30, 40 years ago probably still relevant as stuff that was written 5 years ago. If you were doing research on something to do with technology, something to do with medicine, you would want the most up-to-date information that you can find. The information that's coming out about COVID-19 changes on a daily basis. So the things that we knew back in January has been updated and changed. In general, for most research topics, a good rule of thumb is to keep the information within the past 5 to 10 years, but usually more recent is better. And then when it comes to an online information resource like a website, do the links work. If all of the links are broken, that is a red flag, that it's something that's not being maintained and possibly would be something that is untrustworthy. When it comes to relevance, Relevance deals with how well does this information match my topic? How well does it answer my question? And just because it was the first thing you found, it doesn't necessarily make it the most relevant information. So we have access through the library to 70 plus databases. There are hundreds of thousands of ebooks, millions of journal articles, hundreds of videos. You have access to a wide variety of good, high quality, trustworthy resources. You don't have to go with the first 3 things that show up in a Google search because they were the first 3 things that showed up in a Google search. You have the privilege of being picky. You can, and you should be picky with your information. So you need to find information that is relevant, something that answers your question. You'll need to pay attention to who the intended audience is. Is this at an appropriate level? You don't want to be using information resources that are geared towards elementary students, but at the same time, you don't want to use information resources that are geared to people who are practicing law, practicing medicine. That's too advanced. Like I said, you have access to a variety of sources, and you should look at a variety of sources before you decide which ones are best and which ones you should use. Don't go with the first thing you found because it was the first thing you found. And then if you're using this information for a personal decision, you can ask yourself, would you be comfortable using this for a research paper? Because sometimes we have higher standards for the information that we're going to get a grade on than we do for information that we're using for our personal lives, for our personal decisions. And you should always have that same high standard of information, of quality information, whether it's for a personal decision or for something that you're doing research on. And when you talk about authority, what you really want is you want someone who is qualified to talk about this topic. So you'll want to know who is responsible for this information. If you cannot easily identify who is the author, who is the publisher, who is the source, who is taking responsibility for this information, if you don't know where it's coming from, that automatically makes it suspect. It's kind of like walking into a room and seeing an open water bottle and drinking it, not knowing where it came from or who drank from it last. So you should have the same high standards for your information that you have for your water. You need to know what their qualifications are. What are their credentials? Do they have an appropriate degree? Do they have appropriate work experience? Do they work for an organization that is considered an expert on this topic? Is it easy to find those credentials? Is there contact information? So if you wanted to go back and ask them a question, do they at least give you an email address to get in touch? And then when it comes to the URL, to the web address, .coms, .orgs, and .nets are available to anyone. There's really no difference between the 3. A .org and a .net used to be more strictly controlled. They are not anymore. Anyone who can get a .com can get a .org or .net. The only 2 that are still controlled and still at first glance you know that it's a higher level of information are the .edus and the .govs. The .govs are websites that are reserved for federal, state, and local governments. The .edus are reserved for educational institutions. So when you're looking at the URL, keep that in mind. And then there's accuracy. So you want to know that you're getting information from someone who is trustworthy, that knows what they're talking about. But you also want to make sure that they are getting their facts straight. So do they cite their sources? You're expected to cite yours when you do a research project. Do they tell you where their information is coming from? Are they supporting their claims with evidence, or are they just giving you a bunch of opinions? When it comes to things that are published in scholarly journals and academic journals? Has it been peer reviewed? Is it refereed? Are other people who are considered experts in the field looking at it before it gets published? Can you verify that information in another source? That's an old trick from journalism. You can't print something based on what one person says. You need at least two people backing each other up saying the same thing. Keep an eye out for tone. If it's scholarly writing, if it's news writing, then it should not be biased or emotional. And then another one of those red flag things, if there are lots of spelling, grammar, typographical errors, it means that there was not a lot of care put into reviewing this and therefore makes it more suspect and less trustworthy. And then there's purpose. So why does this exist? Why did someone feel compelled to post this online? Most of the time, it's not necessarily for educational purposes. It's not to add to human knowledge. Sometimes it's meant to be funny. Sometimes they're trying to sell you something. Sometimes they're trying to persuade you to feel the same way about a topic that they do. So you need to keep an eye out for that. Do they make those intentions clear, or are they trying to present themselves as if they're impartial or hiding things? There is a difference between fact and opinion. You can have an informed opinion backed up with facts, but an opinion is still an opinion. So are they being objective or are they being biased? And you should always look out, we all have biases, political, ideological, cultural, religious, whatever. We all have biases, but we need to be aware of them and we need to deal with them and we need to look out for biases in others. So here are some examples. In the next video, we're going to apply the CRAAP test to some specific examples and see how well we do.